Kathleen McNamee is back as we look at Olympic women's football. Kathleen, starting with the US women's national team, difficult game up against the Matildas of Australia. We knew this was going to be a challenging one, especially considering what we have seen from the US women's team so far. It ended in a stalemate, but they are through to the quarterfinals. I suppose that is the big news, but they kind of stuttered their way there, Kathleen. Thoughts on what you saw from them up against the Matildas, even though we did expect a challenge from the Aussies?
Yeah, I think there was obviously a lot of questions after the Sweden game. We didn't really feel like we got many answers to them in New Zealand, as they were the sort of opponents that you expected them to beat. Today with Australia, as we saw, they struggled. They didn't really answer any of those questions that were left behind after Sweden. Ananovsky and Morgan were talking about it afterwards, and they said that, they were trying different tactics. They kind of seemed to imply that they were playing for the draw. But I don't think this is really a team that ever plays for a draw. This is a team that likes to win. They don't like to just sit back and let another team attack them. And I thought it was interesting. Tony Gustavin, the Australian coach, was saying afterwards, and he worked as an assistant coach with the US women's national team for years, that he had never experienced such a lackluster performance from them. He's like, I expected them to press, I expected them to be on the ball, but they just weren't like that. And they just looked impatient. They weren't taking time to do those incredible build-up plays that we know they're able to do. So it's going to be really interesting to see where they go from here. Alex Morgan said that the competition only really starts at the knockout phase, but at the same time, you still have to get through the group and show that, you actually can play and compete. So it'll be interesting to see how they do.
So they do go through second in the group. I suppose that massive goal difference from their match against New Zealand definitely helped them. But last time we spoke, I know that you said that you felt like they needed to do better whenever they felt like they were facing a crisis. It seemed like they kind of panicked and just couldn't find their feet because, let's be honest, in the last couple of years, they rarely face any crisis. But now would you say that they are facing a little bit of a mini crisis, if you will, trying not to sensationalize it, but probably the most challenged that they've been in recent times?
I think so. There was a lot of talk during the week about mentality and how that their mentality wasn't in a place that it has been in the last couple of years. And I think you can still see that in how they performed today. It was stuff like they had heavy first touches. They were getting frustrated with each other. There's just something not quite gelling or clicking with this team. Now, again, it is the US, so you could expect them to turn around in the knockout phase and just all of a sudden turn into this absolute monster that we know that they can be. But at the same time, I think it's going to be really hard for them to get past that after such weak performances. And again, like Australia are a team that they should have beaten, considering how they performed up until the Olympics. Like any of their pre-tournament games were not great. And Gustavin did a great job today at setting them up well. And I thought Mary Fowler, who plays for Australia, was brought in as a last-minute starting player, did really, really well in her debut and caused the US a lot of trouble. But again, an 18-year-old shouldn't be causing the US women's national team that amount of trouble. They should be prepared for what they're facing. So I don't really know how the next stage is going to go for them. In some ways, I kind of hope that we see them take it to the next level, but it would also be interesting to see some of the other countries challenge for that title.
Well, speaking of the other countries, the later match that we did take in, Team GB, they were in action again today against Canada. They got the draw after trailing for some time. It looked like the Canadians were going to just get the win, but still both through to the quarterfinals. Team GB topping that group, Canada second. How much would Canada look at this as maybe an opportunity missed, or will they be all right considering they're through?
I think they'll be annoyed at conceding at such a late moment, and especially the nature in which they conceded. We all know Caroline Weir can score absolute screamers, and I thought she had just a couple of minutes beforehand when she hit the crossbar and the ball just bounced outside the line. But her goal took a massive deflection off a Canadian defender. So I think they'll be annoyed that they got that far, and then that was how they let it go. Because Canada have had this thing throughout Olympics where they always go to like just that little bit, and then they just don't have that final push on. So I think they'll be worried about that heading into the knockout stages. As for Team Great Britain, I didn't see a lot that particularly excited me in that game. I think bringing on the likes of Fran Kirby and Kim Little was great. It injected a whole new sort of pace and power to the team, but possibly too late. I think making those changes 15 minutes before the end of time is too late if you actually want to push for a win. Obviously, they did get the draw, so they did get a result, which was good. But I think Kedri's has done a lot of really interesting stuff with this team, and looking to the quarterfinals, I suppose it'll be, can they banish the demons of their past? Can she be the one that can tactically take them through?
In terms of Team GB players, because we speak about the pressure on the US women's national team, of course, all of it will be there given exactly what they've achieved in recent times. But there is also some pressure on this Team GB because they do have a lot of big names. You mentioned Nikita Paris recently with her now big move to Arsenal. Which of the players probably would you say have kind of lived up to your expectations so far? Or which ones do you want to see probably carrying their weight a bit more?
I think the thing with it is a lot of the time with Team GB is they don't gel particularly well. I think you have people like Lucy Bronze, who's an incredible defender. She has been very, very solid for them. Today was the first day that the Team GB had actually conceded. So we know defensively they're very strong. I think it is those forward players that I want to see a bit more from. Prior to the Olympics, we had it that Fran Kirby was basically their only source of goals. Now during the Olympics, well, apart from today's goal, it was Ellen White who scored all 3 goals beforehand. They seem very dependent on one person, which is fine. But with a team that has that sort of firepower, you would kind of expect a little bit more from them. I love the likes of Caroline Weir. I just think she's an incredible player. She's one of the ones that I tipped at the start of the competition to keep an eye on, because you just never know when she's going to release one of those incredible shots. And I think sometimes she's slightly underrated because of the workup play she normally does. But yeah, she'd definitely be one of my top players.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.